let's talk about the Aurat March. So in this video, we're going to talk about the Aurat March, what it is, what they're advocating for, what their critics say, and then what I think about all of this as a Pakistani that has grown up outside of Pakistan. Every single year since 2018, I believe, Aurat March has been happening in Pakistan, and basically that is a women's march that happens in the beginning of March, and it's to advocate for rights, for women's rights and the rights of the people of Pakistan. To list a few, the Women's March is about ending underage marriages, gender-based violence, honor killings, improve the rights of inheritance for women in Pakistan, to help bring an end to the Balochistan killings and kidnappings that have been happening since I think 2004, among other things. So today I wanted to talk about what exactly is the issue that people tend to have with the Aurat March in Pakistan, specifically the community in Pakistan. The first thing that people tend to have an issue with is the adoption of Western values into our Pakistani culture. It's generally quite conservative and also has elements of Islamic values. Truth be told, if we had a higher emphasis on Islamic values rather than cultural, traditional values of the Pakistani culture, I think we would have less need for these women's marches and these calls for the rights of women. But because we tend to have this emphasis on cultural values that are very how do I say this, counterintuitive to a productive, progressive society, we tend to have these issues that end up needing to be called out upon in things like the Women's March. The second thing that tends to be an issue is the extreme language that these women tend to be using. Not all of them, but a significant portion that tends to be highlighted are these women that are using very extreme language that is not typical of the Pakistani woman or the culture in that community, is like what they're used to. And so I can understand why it can be very upsetting and why people that oppose the Women's March feel so angry towards or aggressive towards. Not that it's okay to have such a visceral reaction that some of these people tend to have, but I can understand their perspective. The third thing that I think plays a huge role is the fact that oftentimes, not all of the issues that are brought forward, but some of them tend to be pushing really hard against the religious values and the cultural values of the community in Pakistan. That all said, all the issues I laid out earlier, pretty much none of them go against the teachings of Islam. The fourth really big factor, I think, in all of this is the fact that a lot of the people from the previous generation, both men and women, are not used to women not being docile. Like, they are not used to women standing up for themselves, raising their voices and advocating for themselves in honestly any capacity. And so when there are women that are being a little bit more out there, you could say, and saying things that are very aggressive for that community, I can understand why they would be very upset about this and have a problem with it. And I think the last factor that's very interesting is the fact that a lot of people that are in opposition of the Women's March or just aren't totally for it feel like they do give the rights to women that they're advocating for. The problem with all of this that I personally see is that, honestly, I feel like for the most part, as long as women or disadvantaged people in the community, minorities, etc., as long as they play by the rules of the larger, more in power community, which tends to be the men, then they'll otherwise be fine. But if they push against the norms, or just not even the norms, but whatever the men in their lives say, they will face consequences and those rights will be taken away. Now, I do think that this is more so a prevalent and serious issue for people that are more disadvantaged, in the sense of they don't have the financial means or other resources to support themselves, and so they find themselves trapped in these situations. And so while I do think that there are a lot of privileges and advantages of being a woman in Pakistan, they're mostly privileges and not rights. So for example, I was reading about the rights of inheritance and how even though women do have the right to inheritance, oftentimes the men in the family may take advantage of the situation and not give them their right to their inheritance. I say oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, because I don't know the statistics, but that is something that happens. There is an abuse of power, and also oftentimes an imbalance in knowledge and resources to fight for your rights to these types of things. So I do think that while the criticisms for the Aurat March can be valid for some cases or for some certain topics, they aren't necessarily valid for some of the issues that I listed out earlier. One thing that I definitely appreciated about the Aurat March this year was that there was some emphasis placed on calling out Muslim Pakistani leaders and Pakistan to do something about and play a role about ending the G war. If there was no mention of that, I think I would have felt some type of way, but I do appreciate that. So all in all, I do feel like the Aurat March has a place and they are doing some good or advocating for some good. I can understand the perspective of some of the critics, especially because in any group, there's always going to be some bad apples that kind of tarnish the objective of the group or the community that is working for the Aurat March. And there is definitely a lot of room for improvement when it comes to the rights for women in Pakistan and for the communities and the minority groups in Pakistan in general. That being said, that brings me to the end of my video. If you have any thoughts about the Aurat March or if you'd like to share any additional information about the Aurat March, let me know in the comments down below and I'll see you guys in the next video. Assalamu alaikum. Yay!